implying we're not normally welcoming group, David?
Excellent. David, I was just saying, we have our OMPOC meeting. Those occur quarterly in different cities, and we are hosting next Friday. And we are putting together a little bit of a driving tour for folks to see infrastructure that we ourselves have invested in, or anything interesting people might, including our new sweeper in action. We've been a bike lane.
Barb, I can provide you with a list of projects we funded these last couple of cycles.
That'd be great. That'd be great. So that is underway at this moment. If anybody has any idea of, oh, I know, they ought to go see this or that roundabout for this or that reason. And there we go. All right. I believe we are ready to call to order this meeting of the Bend Metropolitan Planning Organization. My name is Barb Campbell. I serve on the Bend City Council, and I'm also the chair of the Bend Metropolitan Planning Organization. Let's do introductions. I myself prefer she and her pronouns. Chris, would you please start?
Chris Doty, Deschutes County Road Department, sitting in for Commissioner Chang today.
Greg Brunford, Deschutes River Woods, also part of the Bend MPO TAC.
Ariel Mendez, Bend City Council, he, him.
David Amerton, ODOT Planning and Programming Manager, he, him. I'm filling in for Bob Townsend, who's the previous area manager, and his position's currently vacant.
Andrea Napoli, Bend MPO Senior Planner.
Tyler Diekey, Bend MPO Manager.
Kelly Kennedy, Bend MPO staff. Excellent. I just now realized I do not have a paper agenda in front of me. Thank you so much. Hybrid meeting guidelines. Tyler, will you please?
Yes, let me,
Thank you. Thank you.
yeah, let me get it pulled up here. So just a quick overview of hybrid meeting guidelines. If you're online and want to speak to us, please raise your hand. This meeting is being recorded. And the live stream is being pushed out via YouTube. That's all I have.
Thank you. And thank you to the City of Bend. We're meeting in the City of Bend Council chambers today. Appreciate that. That gets us to agenda item number 3, which is a first opportunity for public comment. Anyone like to make a comment for the board? Sure, come on up.
Hi, I'm Royce Calvert from Southwest Bend with Connect Bend. We're really grateful the South UGB footbridge is part of the new Metropolitan Transportation Plan. This project will bring immediately change in travel behavior and pull vehicles off some of our busiest roads. Today, we'd like to address some concerns about the project that Oregon Wild expressed in a letter to the policy board. First, their letter calls this project divisive. There's no evidence to support this claim. A 2017 poll of 532 randomly selected respondents showed 72% support for the footbridge project and 13% opposition. This was confirmed in a 2023 poll of 840 randomly selected respondents, which showed 71% support for the completion of a footbridge crossing the Deschutes River, which would connect the Deschutes River Trail on the south end of Bend to the Deschutes National Forest near the Rimrock Trailhead, with just 11% opposed. In any public debate with strong majority support, a small minority will take an opposing view. That's just human nature. A University of Michigan study indicates that 15% of Americans deny the existence of climate change. That doesn't make the issue divisive. Oregon's wild's habitat and wildlife claims are made without evidence. We do note that relevant evidence would be collected via NEPA and other mandated reviews, which will include robust public comment and input from multiple relevant agencies. If Oregon Wild lacks evidence on a given issue, we urge them to cooperate with relevant agencies in collecting and sharing that evidence through the processes established and mandated for projects like this. Oregon Wild's letter asserts that this project would weaken river protections and set a bad precedent. We find no evidence to support this claim, as the potential legal and regulatory pathways all work entirely within state and federal protections as originally enacted. Bob Ratcliffe, a recently retired section chief for the National Park Service, chief of conservation and outdoor recreation specifically, stated at the July 16 BPRD meeting that there would be no new precedent set by this project. At the NPS, one of Chief Ratcliffe's responsibilities was developing technical guidance related to the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act, and he has decades of experience with these issues. We're happy to share the transcript. Mr. Fernandez cast doubts over the notion that the proposed footbridge would shorten the drive from Southwest Bend to Good Dog / Rimrock. This claim is counterintuitive, perhaps stunningly so. We urge Oregon Wild to provide evidence supporting this claim. A traffic impact analysis would hopefully be part of the executed project. Again, if Oregon Wild lacks evidence on a given issue, they should support relevant agencies in producing it. Mr. Fernandez finally claims that the city of Bend analyzed the issue in their TSP and offered a compromise location that would entail a bridge connecting to Century from around Powers Road on the east side of the Deschutes. We find no evidence to support this presentation of historical events. The MPTP is an aspirational document. Projects with a history of community support should be included unless there is clear evidentiary basis for excluding them. None has been presented so far. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member of the public make a comment? Seeing none, we can go ahead and move on to agenda item number 4, which is approval of new meeting minutes.
I move to approve the August 16th, 2024 Policy Board draft meeting minutes as presented.
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Mendez and a second from Mr. Doty. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. We now get to our next agenda item, which might be a short agenda item, even though it represents the very most work that this organization actually does, which is the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. We've got staff to take us through this.
So Aaron isn't on? Oh, no, there he is. Oh, okay.
There he is. All right. So I'll just introduce, we've been, as Councilor Campbell said, development and maintenance of this plan is, one of the fundamental responsibilities of the Metropolitan Planning Organization. We've been working on this update since June, I believe, of last year. And we have worked, brought several presentations before the board, had quite a bit of public engagement, which Andrea will talk about. And we are here today to hopefully get your review, approval, and adoption of this document. And with that, I will turn it over to Aaron Berger from DKS.
Thank you, Tyler. We can go ahead and jump right in. So today on the MTP, as Commissioner Campbell mentioned, this should hopefully be a fairly short agenda item. We're gonna, one more time, we're gonna hit that MTP process overview and review of the objectives, talk about where we are in the MTP process. Spoiler alert, we're at the very end. What is new or has changed since we last met? Then Andrea is going to talk about the summary of public comments. I'll talk about a summary of the edits that have been made to the MTP chapters since we met in August, and then we'll wrap up with some next steps. So back to this MTP process and a review of our project objectives. As we've been discussing throughout, this is really building upon completed local planning efforts, really the bottom-up planning approach, building off of all those local plans that have been developed at the city, county, and state agency level, bringing those into this MTP plan. Throughout this process, we're maintaining continued transparency to the community through our public outreach and through our MPO policy board check-ins and TAC, MPO TAC as well. This plan is extending to the horizon year of 2045, over the horizon year of 2040 from the last update. We revisited funding expectations for the MPO, prioritized projects within the constraints of those funding expectations, and then solicited and incorporated public input throughout the process with the overall goal of meeting our federal adoption deadline at the end of September of 2024, so end of this month. Looking at our schedule, as you can see, as we've worked through this process, we started with some review and moved into the updates of elements of the MTP. At the same time, developing our MTP project list and financial plan. And now we're at the very end of this process where we're moving into adoption. So it's September of 2024. So what's changed since last month? We've been addressing comments we received from the TAC, Policy Board, FTA, and FHWA. So we received comments on the draft MTP from those groups. We also completed the 21-day public comment period, which was from the August 16th through September 6th. And we've addressed those comments as well. And the comment log is included now as Appendix I to the MTP. And then we completed the MTP document in terms of formatting. We put it into InDesign, so the document style looks a bit different from what you would have seen in the draft version. With that, I will, if there are no questions, I will hand it off to Andrea to talk through the public comment.
So just to clarify, this is public comments received during our 21-day public comment period and not necessarily from the events that we've gone to through the last year and a half. But we received about 12 public comments, which I've summarized and then categorized into what they're specifically addressing. And I'll go over each one. And we have responded to all of them in various levels of detail or reached out to the implementing agency to get their response also. So initial comment increasing, there were a couple of these talking about wanting to see more funding for more and better transit within the Bend MPO. A comment regarding moving Bend's fixed transit system to an on-demand system. Also wanting to consider a study for bus rapid transit along 3rd Street. And finally, requesting consideration for a light rail system within Bend. So personal vehicle and freight related, there was a comment saying that this individual felt that the adding a traffic signal to Empire and 97, the southbound ramp, was unnecessary. Additionally, an individual wanted to request that the Ferguson Road 15th Street intersection improvement project, which is currently in midterm, be moved to near term. There was a comment requesting that Reed Market congestion be addressed, and then also safety concerns along Reed Market, US 97 northbound exit. And so some of these, I gave information that this is actually being addressed in the project list, that there are projects moving forward. So gave people information on that. And then, I got to add the morale related one. Who's working in planning, sometimes you don't see that. So next slide. So bike and pedestrian related, there were quite a few here. Safety concerns as far as a lack of consistent bike and pedestrian infrastructure along Butler Market. And then there were 2 comments regarding the Deschutes River Trail South UGB Bike Pedestrian Bridge. One was requesting that it be removed from the MTP and instead move forward with the study for river crossings project that came out of the City of Bend Transportation System Plan. And then one in support for the Deschutes River Trail South UGB Bike Pedestrian Project. General comment supporting all projects within in the MTP that improve biking and walking. And then finally, there was a lengthy comment regarding the Hawthorne Bridge project. This individual was concerned with construction and maintenance costs, limited usage of the bridge, lack of bikeway connections for the bridge. surrounding property devaluation, closure of the parkway. And they wanted to instead see these funds, which are specific to that project, instead be moved to bike and pedestrian improvements at multiple existing crossings. And a summary of agency comments during the specific comment period. Again, you know, this is, our MTP has gone through our TAC multiple times. So this is just specific within this time frame. So we did get a response from FHWA citing a number of federal code sections. I had responded addressing all of them, so we're good there. And then some state and local comments, mainly helping with, you know, presentation of the information or adding in additional details. So that's the summary.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any questions?
Yeah, so thanks for that, Andrea, and thanks for responding to everybody's public comments. Aaron, I think this is a question for you because I just want to make sure that I'm highlighting the right lessons to take away from this. This is a tremendous amount of work. I know you've described it as bottom up, and it's taking, what is it, 5 different agencies and combining them in a coherent way is a really big challenge. So the one thing that I wanted to highlight is on page 5-10, which is the section on future needs. Congestion is highlighted, and it says increased motor vehicle traffic in the region due to population and job growth and increased recreation and visitor travel will lead to increased congestion within the Bend MPA. However, the ability of jurisdictions within the MPA to increase capacity of existing roadways is constrained by the existing rights of way within the built environment and budgets. So I want to suggest that there are some lessons here that are perhaps less constrained. So not just focusing on the built environment, the rights of way, but 3 points that I wanted to highlight, some of which were highlighted in some of the public comments. And I think this is all in here, but it's sometimes just a struggle to tie it together. So I wanted to run these 3 lessons by you to make sure that I'm on the right track here. So instead of focusing just on rights of way and budget constraints for capital projects, 3 other ways that we can respond to increased congestion. One is as we've talked about, the quality of walking and biking facilities isn't modeled here. So there is a note that describes the efforts that the city of Bend, for example, is embarking on to improve the quality of those facilities. So that's the first one. And then the second one is we did hear a lot about transit expansion, and that is mentioned here as well, in particular frequency, but also coverage. And there's some nice bullet points describing the need for that. But I don't think that was modeled in the congestion modeling. And then the third one is there is on page 320 a description of transportation demand management. But I want to go a little bit farther with that because I think the city of Bend has an opportunity to help employers provide additional incentives for people to not drive alone at peak hours. So it's not just about things like providing showers. There's also programmatic and monetary incentives that we could do. So those are the 3 points that I wanted to just ask you about. Does that sound like I'm on the right track here? I think it's all in here. It's just, I wanted to take a minute to highlight, we don't have to respond to the worries of congestion only in terms of the built environment and budget. So quality of walking and biking facilities, transit expansion in a variety of different ways, which is listed here, and then transportation demand management.
I think, yeah, and I'm sorry that I don't have that page pulled up in front of me. So the context of where that sits and related to the rest of the document, I believe that was in the motor vehicle needs section. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's chapter 5. 5.
Yeah, page 5-10. I believe that's in the motor vehicle future needs discussion. I think it's, I guess, the context of the document itself too. Trying to avoid in the needs section getting too far into solutions, because that's covered in the next chapter, which is the capital projects discussion. So I guess that's the part I'm trying to understand, because we did break this out by mode, talking about the needs specific to each mode. The needs, we outline them, but in terms of discussing solutions, we tried to save that more for the projects discussion. Just because that's how we had set up the document to flow.
Well, this is on page 3-20, the section on transportation demand management. The first paragraph, the last sentence of it says TDM strategies can delay or replace the need for capital investments in projects such as new road capacity. So in my mind, I think that's exactly right. And it's not just transportation demand management. It's also things like better transit and improving the quality and connectivity of active transportation. So I'm just trying to highlight that when we think about, I know you're shying away from describing these as solutions or, some kind of value, but I feel like we can't really get away from the idea that there are values infused through this whole document. And I'm worried that if we only think of the solutions in terms of the capital aspect of it, that we'll be making a big mistake. So instead of thinking just in terms of the capital aspect, I just wanted to highlight the 3 areas where I feel like we can pull these lessons out of this document. And so for the other agencies that use this document, if you're worried about an increase in per capita VMTs or all of the projections about congestion, we don't have to just focus on the capital side of things. So those are the 3 areas that I thought that I wanted to highlight. And I just wanted to make sure that I'm not drawing an incorrect conclusion from this document.
No, that's correct. Sorry, I was misinterpreting. Yes, that the solutions to those, I guess, congestion needs that we highlighted, there's multimodal solutions to all of that. And yeah, I think it's important to highlight that, because that aligns with the goals of the agencies within the MPO.
Okay, thank you, Aaron.
I'll add 2 things as well. I think with the transit component, the ET's plan now is 4 or 5 years old, I believe. And I think they don't have a schedule to update it, but in just informal discussions with CET staff, they've talked about potentially kicking off an update in 2025 or 2026. And so I think that'll provide an opportunity to really look at what kind of system, how's the system operating today, and what do we want it to be in the future? And do we need to fundamentally rethink some components of that system or not, and how does that look? And then with TDM, I believe under the climate friendly rules, there's going to have to be much more robust TDM activities within the city of Bend in the future. And I think it may be included in that work program that's been presented to city council. And so I guess TDM today, I would say, is quite minimal within, this area. So going forward, there's going to have to be much more robust demand management systems put in place. What that looks like, I don't know, but that's going to become a much bigger component of transportation in the future.
Thanks for that, Tyler. And thanks for letting me put you on the spot, Aaron.
No problem.
Thank you. Thanks, Art. Great questions. I have a question that's far, just big picture. So one of the public comments, I will choose one of the public comments, which was light rail, which is something, I myself think we should be contemplating light rail because of the right of way it would take. The earlier we start preserving space for something like light rail, the better off we will be. And so my question is, nowhere in this plan is light rail mentioned. Does that prevent CET from planning to have light rail? Because it's not in this plan. Right, thank you. Exactly. I just wanted to make sure we said that out loud. This is a plan, and like all of the other plans that we work with, this is meant to be a roadmap. this is where we think we're gonna go and how we think we're gonna get there. But like every other plan that we all deal with, plans can change. It might be complicated to change. You might have to dig all in the city. It's, you know, sometimes a plan that seems to me might be simple actually means we have to change the comprehensive plan, which is not simple. But, you know, I just want to make sure everybody is mindful of that this is not a document that excludes anything at all. It is an inclusive document. It's not meant to prevent any agency from doing something. So, you know, really, not really a question, more of just a comment that we're all mindful of, and certainly in the public if they're
Yeah,
interested.
it can be amended and then it's updated every 5 years, so.
Right? So I'm thinking that what the information you just gave us, oh yeah, there's going to be an update in 5 years after CET does their plan in 2 or 3 years, right? So just in that, we're seeing how this document works, that it's a living document and depends on all of these other plans. And again, that goes to the scope of just how much you all have done over the last year and how much I appreciate that staff has gotten us to this point where I think we might be ready for a motion.
Wait, there's still.
Oh, sorry.
We're just moving along. So I quickly want to touch on the chapter edits that have occurred in the last, in response to the TAC policy board comments and FHWA, FTA. So we'll run through these pretty quickly because none of these are very significant. But for chapters, we add an executive summary at the beginning of the document. So that's new, very short, but it's just kind of a what is the MTP. And then we have chapter 1 was just editorial changes, as was chapter 2. Chapter 3, we did have some updates to the environmental maps, which are included as an appendix. Andre, I don't remember that appendix number off the top of my head. It might be A, actually, or appendix B. Okay. And then also we added some references to ongoing updates to the federal functional classifications within within the MPA. So that there were just some edits there. And then for chapter 4, based on some input from Commissioner Chang, we highlighted the potential growth impacts of the Tumalo Sewer District. Also highlighted that the primary growth throughout the county has been occurring in the urban areas. Again, these are very minor, but just some things that were discussed previously. Highlighted the lack of CET representation on the MPO policy board as a need. That was, I think, in response to a comment raised by Commissioner Mendez last policy board. And then we also discussed increased e-mobility device usage. I think I added a paragraph referencing an ODOT study about just the kind of e-device market penetration and how that's been growing kind of exponentially recently, and how we're really just scratching the surface on what that could ultimately end up doing for mobility throughout the MPO. So we do have a little discussion on that. So that was chapter. Now, before you get too confused, I noted chapter 4 is evaluation process and needs. We did have a little bit of a snafu as we were putting the InDesign document together. So chapter 4 in the document you reviewed is actually the funding plan. We do intend to flip the funding plan to chapter 5. And then keep chapter 4 as the evaluation process and needs. So right now, when you review the document, you get to chapter 4, it's the funding plan, and chapter 5 is the future needs. I know that's confusing, but we'll get that fixed. So chapter 5, right, will be the funding plan. In that chapter, we had some editorial changes. We flipped positions with that one with chapter 6, because you can see now how we got out of order here. That was chapter 6 was previously the funding plan. Now that's the transportation projects chapter. And that was based on City of Bend comments just for the overall document flow. And then we added description of distinction between funding and financing, that chapter. And then chapter 6, again, some of the chapter positioning change, added a description of what a financially constrained project list is, some technical context on the VMT per capita measure discussion, as that measure that was used for this process is fairly draft and is ongoing. Some more work on the ODOT side through the Transportation Planning and Analysis Unit. And then we updated the demand and capacity plots for better clarity per ODOT comments, and reviewed and updated the project's maps and project list. Did a pretty in-depth QC on those to make sure those were all lining up. And those are included as attachment 6A through 6G to chapter 6. And then on our last chapter, the performance measures, added the per capita information to the federal performance measures. So any questions on that? Those were the primary changes that we made to the document since you saw the draft back in August.
Have you guys included the eastern side of 97 down south of, because those maps and that was not changed. I was wondering if that's been changed or not.
Eastern.
Yeah.
Be-
7.
Yeah, be on the east side of 97 so that you
Yes.
can,
I mean, the board's made that change. It's not reflected in these maps.
because I didn't see it in there, so I'm just asking a question. Okay.
Great question. Thanks.
Thanks.
Any other questions? All right.
All right, so our next steps, obviously adopting the MTP. We have the minor editorial changes, switching chapters 4 and 5, right? So that the needs will come first, then the funding plan. And then we will be uploading the 508 compliant, so the ADA version to the MTP website. That's something we're waiting until we've completed our last edits because again, those in InDesign, that's a little bit of an exercise. And then there are several planning recommendations coming out of the MTP. So obviously those should spur future discussions with the MPO TAC and Policy Board, some of those studies that are coming out of this MTP as recommendations. That's it from me.
Thanks, Aaron.
Any other questions for Aaron? Aaron, thank you so much for your work on this.
Thank you. It's been good to work with you all.
All right.
I move to adopt the 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan by way of resolution 2024-04.
I'll second.
Excellent. We have a motion from Mr. Mendez and a second from Mr. Doty. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And that is unanimous. Congratulations. Have staff, have you got a big party plan to celebrate this evening?
Should.
I think you should. Yes, I hope you do. At least take a moment to reflect on the importance of this and that it took a long time and it's now
Sort of, yeah, sort of.
sort of, exactly. Enjoy it while it's done. Excellent. Okay, that gets us on to our 6th agenda item, which is a fiscal year 2024-25 budget adjustment. And city staff will talk to us about this one. Or, I'm sorry, MPO staff.
All right, so I'll just jump in. This is, we're adding a small amount of money to our 2025 fiscal year 25 budget. And what happened was when the budget was adopted this past spring, one of our funding sources, our primary funding sources are from the Federal Highway Administration and the Federal Transit Administration. Our FTA funding amount had not been finalized yet, and so we put in the funding at that time. The final numbers were issued right towards the end of FY24. And so we need to update or amend the budget to reflect that. And so what that translates into is a net increase of $5,200 to our budget. So it's quite minor. But ODOT has requested that we process this amendment so that we can modify our funding agreement. Any questions?
I don't think so. Tori, did you have any further comments, anything? You're just here to answer questions?
Yep, Tyler covered it. I'm just here if you need me.
Oh, well, we appreciate that you've been here to help us. Thank you. I think we're ready for a motion.
I move to approve the fiscal year 2025 budget adjustment by way of resolution 2024-05.
Second.
Excellent. We have a motion from Mr. Mendez and a second from Mr. Doty. Any further discussion? Glad it's 5,200 more and not some amount less. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that is unanimous, which brings us right along to agenda item number 7, which is the Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program amendments. Kelly Kennedy from the Bend MPO will talk to us.
So we have, 4 proposed amendments, and one of those includes 5 project changes, so it's really 8 projects total being amended. 7 of those are transit projects, 1 is an ODOT project. We have a couple slides here showing the information that was noticed, and to kind of highlight what's going on with each of these, the Oregon Transportation Network fiscal year 25 project is new. It's created to match program allocations. There's another transit project, Oregon Transportation Network fiscal year 24. That is being updated. The project name is being updated and the funding is being decreased in the other phase. There's an ODOT project to repave about 8 miles of highway between Romaine Village and Lava Butte. And that is being added because most of that is within MPO, within the MPO boundary. Next slide. And then on this slide, there are 5 projects in one amendment. These are all transit projects, enhanced mobility projects. And they involve increases in funding, project name and description updates. And there are a couple that are just slipping to the fiscal year 25. Next slide. And just a note on those transit projects that we just looked at, the 5 that are together. Those are normal changes that happen annually. So it's related to the FTA 5310 allocation for small urban areas. And then there's just a couple highlights I wanted to bring up for the Romaine Village, the Lava Butte paving. As I mentioned, it's about 8 miles. And then this amendment adds about 900,000 to the preliminary engineering phase in the current MTIP. And then in the next MTIP, the 2730, there will be about a $9.9 million construction phase expected. So that's just a heads up.
Yeah, I was gonna say 900,000, it's just.
Yeah.
I
Looks lovely.
was just wondering, is there some way that you put down that, because it looked like they were gonna pave that, and it looks, you can't pave that many miles with $900,000. I think you should probably say this is an engineering, process, expenses, stuff like that, yeah. But
Thank you.
It would be highlighted as a preliminary
Okay,
engineering phase.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's for this MTIP, that's
Yeah.
the only phase that's included for
Yeah,
the
but, yeah.
900,000.
Yeah.
And then we did our usual 21-day public comment period for this starting August 29th. So it just closed yesterday. We received 1 comment. It was included in the agenda packet. It's pretty lengthy, very thoughtful. Some highlights there is just general support for active transportation and public transit expansion. Pointing out safety, quality of life, health, equity, economic considerations, and then just some general points related to what that individual would hope to see with public transit improvements over time. So unless there's any questions, we would just hope for consideration of approval. Yeah, go ahead, Greg.
Okay. Ask a question.
You can.
Okay, on those CET projects that you increased, is that because there's an inflation factor there, or are they just changing the scope of it? No,
It's my understanding they do this every year just to match to. adjust
the revenue that's coming in, okay,
what's- Yeah.
all right.
Yeah, and I think that was, add one clarification to that. The most federal highway administration funding, there's detail in the major transportation bills that lay out funding. FTA's funding, there is information in the current surface transportation bill for it, but those awards are finalized through the annual congressional budgeting process each year. And so those numbers can fluctuate from year to year because of just congressional action.
Okay, okay, just asking.
So if we didn't hypothetically approve one of these, I mean, this isn't MPO money. It's, you know, like in the case of the Romaine Village Way to Lava Butte that I just highlighted, $900,000. Western Federal Lands, I guess that's a FLAP,
Yes.
Federal Lands Access Program. I mean, it just seems like we don't get to weigh in on the wisdom of these projects, but I mean, what happens if we said no?
If the board said no, the project technically couldn't move forward.
Wow.
Paving,
Yep,
this is what you're referring to here.
yes.
I mean, it just seems like there's an opportunity to think about, you know, if we're worried about getting visitors to Lava Butte. You know, we talked about for the city of Bend, how important it is to build into the funding of the transportation system a way to capture the intensity of someone's use. And this seems like a, you know, kind of just, it's, you know, $900,000, it's probably not even gonna cover very much of the paving. But
Just engineering, that's what I was asking you.
Yeah, I mean, we spend money regardless of the choices that people make, and it seems like there would be a better way to do this, but I guess we'll have that conversation when the big money comes through to actually pay.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, you know, Lava Butte is very innovative in terms of providing shuttling to the top. They recognize they had too much congestion. And if we want to think about, well, how do we get people there in a way that reflects the actual cost of getting them there? Having everybody contribute, regardless of whether they visit, regardless of what mode they use to get there, doesn't seem like a great way to capture that, the intensity of that usage. I mean,
This is to repave 97, not necessarily, I mean, for all users, not necessarily just the ones headed to love it.
Right, right.
gotcha. Oh, I see. I
It's 97.
This is paving
thought it was
maintenance.
off of 97.
No, it's 97. It's
Okay,
Yeah, it's just, it's a.
I think
it's
that was a
large
little
pavement preservation
confusing.
Project.
gotcha.
Referring to Lava Butte as the end point,
It's just-
because
Yeah.
we have had projects connecting, we've been working on a multimodal path to connect. So I completely understand why, you know, you've got in your minds the other connections we're trying to make.
Right.
But yeah, this is maintenance of Highway 97.
Exactly.
I mean, it's flap grants also feel very special, and Highway 97 needs a sustainable source of funding that isn't grant based, I think.
Of course.
But
We all agree
Yeah,
on that.
no, as far as counties go, I mean, we, you know, provide a lot of federal land access, you know, in parts of our system. Rely on flat, you know, for maintenance and preservation quite a bit, bridge replacement, things like that. So the fact that it's being applied to a state highway.
Yeah,
Seems a little bit, you know, taking advantage
mm,
of the program and the fact that it does penetrate federal lands, but
mm,
you know, it also does grab funding away from other county entities that we've historically, you know, had our hooks in flap a little bit more and need to more so now. So, I mean, we've talked about it with the flap committee, with ODOT, so on and so forth. The reality is, state doesn't have a lot of maintenance preservation dollars. That's why we're
right.
having this conversation about funding next session.
So is this
So
using-
they're taking advantage of that program to do some maintenance here.
I mean, David, maybe you can speak to this. It seems like it's using, I mean, ODOT's maintenance challenges are pretty high on everybody's mind, I suspect, right now. Is this just taking advantage of this program to try to fill a gap that, you know, might, I mean, there's gonna need to be a longer term solution to how to maintain Highway 97 than a series of flap grants.
Yeah, I don't know the nature of this specific funding for this specific project this time. It's not the first time that flap has been used to pay for repaving this specific section of highway. And the reason for that is that, you know, when we prepare a flap application, when anyone prepares a flap application, one of the things they want to know is what proportion of the traffic on a particular, on the roadway or the facility that you're proposing is related to federal lands traffic. And so that's why this particular section of highway tends to score well in that application process, because it's surrounded by federal lands, by Deschutes National Forest, and more than that, pretty high use, high attraction area, federal land. So that's why we've applied for this section.
I would just say,
multiple
like,
times
considering
rather than other
The
some other
history of
sections.
flap, there's been a lot more exciting projects that flap has supported than repaving of Highway 97, I guess. So that, I mean, I would have concerns about that one, but otherwise, I mean,
It's already been granted, I'm guessing.
yeah.
You know, that-
So if we
yeah.
send it back, then we can't just reallocate it to a better project.
Yeah, certainly not one within the MPO. It's harder than the MPO. There's
Yeah.
not as much federal land penetration.
Yeah.
And so
Okay.
cities generally don't compete that well in that program. But can. But yeah, it's
Well, I'm
It's
inclined to give them a pass this time, but don't count on it.
I am glad you brought up this topic, just because I think attention needs to continue to be paid to ODOT's funding challenges. And this absolutely is an example of what happens when you don't have enough money to plow snow and you don't have enough money to fill potholes. Well, then you start getting people thinking creatively about what other cookie jars they can get their fingers into. And this seems to be a very clear example of that exact thing. Last year, we saw in the paper, ODOT does not have enough money. They have this plan where we might not have our own highways plowed. And now we're seeing that somebody has figured out there's money available. And, you know, I agree with you. This is, wow, no, this is not what I thought of for forest lands access. The project I always mention is the haul trail that we did with the flap grant. You know, that to me is forest land access, you know. But so is this, right? You know, this is a spot. I myself really think the lava cast forest is so interesting, which is another place, is another reason why people are pulling off of 97
Yeah.
at that, you know, in that area, actually using it to access the forest. And they're doing that at Lava Butte. They're doing that for lava cast forest. They're doing that for some of those resources you can reach up near Sun River. So yeah, no, it's interesting. I just think, you know, here you go. This is exactly what you're gonna get if there's not enough money in the cookie jar for maintenance. Yeah. Okay, I think we're ready for a motion.
I move to approve the proposed amendment to the 2024-2027 MTIP as presented.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion for Mr. Mendez and a second for Mr. Doty. Any further discussion? And all in favor?
Aye.
David, are you voting on, did you vote aye?
I did.
Thank you so much. That's unanimous. We are just moving right along. We are up to agenda item number 8. This is the 2025 Oregon legislative session. These are opportunities for the Bend Metropolitan Planning Organization to engage with our state legislature. Tyler.
I put Chris Doty's gonna be, with him being here, I put his name on the
Oh,
list
look at
because of
that.
his
Hey,
engagement and the,
Earn my lunch.
exactly. That's right.
Chris is pretty engaged in the AOC transportation discussions, and so want to make sure, just thought it could be good to have your input on this topic. So I don't have much. I mean, in terms of like foremost, wanted to be more of an informal discussion. So the Oregon legislature will convene in late January, and there's a, as I think most folks know, there's a pretty big expectation that a transportation funding package will emerge, be developed during the session. And so a couple of things. There was the Joint Transportation Committee met in Bend about a week ago. Thought we could spend a few minutes just kind of reviewing any outcomes or any highlights of that for those that were in attendance, and then just discuss engagement opportunities for the MPO board during that 2025 session. So with that, Chris, were you on the bus tour?
I was, yeah.
Any big outcomes or?
Yeah, I guess just observations. The committee wasn't in full representation, so there weren't, a tremendous amount of committee members, maybe 5 or 6 on the committee that were actually on the bus. Seemed engaged, Ben's doing some cool, neat stuff, and they got to see, some of that nice little kind of tour through the community. Then went to the North 97 project. Got to see, it in its current stage. Then we took them around to Chutes Junction, to Tumalo Road, Old Bend Redmond Highway, and kind of back down, back to the ODOT maintenance yard. And, this committee's, it was their 9th stop. And so they've seen a lot of ODOT facilities, they've seen a lot of communities and counties and cities doing their thing and whatnot. And, the theme of this whole legislative push is to, certainly fund maintenance and operations. I think that's front and center. Everyone gets that. And then to also honor, some of the commitments of House Bill 2017 and projects that are kind of floundering, mostly, I think, in the Portland area. Let's
Can I ask
see.
you about that, Chris?
Yeah.
Because I feel like when I look at the League of Cities is also trying to gather information from all the municipal governments in the state. And so city council recently went through and looked at their legislative voter guide, and a couple of the transportation packages that were up for support included the idea of this kind of omnibus focus on transportation, where one of them is exactly what you just described as a kind of doubling down on previous commitments that were listed in House Bill 2017. I feel like if some of these projects have not been completed by now, maybe there's a good reason for it. Some of them have spent, I think the Rose Quarter project for I-5 has spent something like $127 million, and it hasn't even broken ground yet. So do you get a sense that there might be an appetite to actually say, hey, maybe we shouldn't double down on all of these old projects from almost a decade ago? Maybe we ought to take a fresh set of eyes and say, let's try to, especially given, because we're talking about expansion in some of these cases, not just operations and maintenance.
So I haven't heard that as much as it's kind of, I think the backdrum beat is, we don't want to do what we've always done, and that's have a long list of earmarked projects, to have a bunch of bonded projects that ODOT's delivering, that then take all the increment that would be increased with new funding away from maintenance. I think they're going to avoid, pretty heavily, the thought of doing that sort of thing. I think there is commitment to deliver what was promised in 2017, especially in the Rose Quarter. But the reality is, even the ODOT number that they're asking for is so large that what you said will probably be the outcome. They will probably have to make some sort of prioritizations over what gets to happen and what doesn't. Because if it was simply building what those projects are currently budgeted at, going to the legislature and asking for that funding, it would be, I think, a pretty substantial fuel tax and registration fee increase just to do those things.
Just to do what was committed in 2017.
Let alone, kind of address the operations and maintenance issue that ODOT has. Let alone, here we come, we want 50% of, local government, we want 50% of any funding package as well. For counties get 30%, cities get 20%. So top all that, you have a highway cost allocation study that basically says freight and the weight mile tax, which is one of the three legs of the stool for funding, is freight's already paying more than its fair share. And so, we won't be able to probably rely on added revenue from a weight mile tax increase. Rather, registration and the regular gas tax are gonna have to increase. And so it's kind of left that such that it will be difficult to kind of summon, the type of funding from those three sources. It's really just gonna come from two. That's how I see it.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, it's the numbers are astronomical.
Wow.
In
I mean, it's
terms of-
funny because everybody in that room either said safety or funding for operations and maintenance. Nobody said, gosh, I really hope we finish these old projects that were previously committed to.
Yeah, and so there'll be committees, I think, developed around, probably putting, funding proposals together, actual adjustments to registration fees, actual, fuel tax increases. I'm gonna do my best from the county side, to get as close as I can to that. I would prefer to see, kind of metro area targeted increases.
Yes.
We all have a stake, I think,
sorry,
in how
yes.
well, the interstate system moves through Portland. With the airport and the ports and what have you. I think all Oregonians recognize that to some degree. But a lot of the added cost that's coming into those projects isn't necessarily supportive of, the type of movement of people and goods through there as it is, I think, making up for the sins of the past, putting a cover over the highway to, get something, leave it better than it was in terms of Albina neighborhood and things like that. So that's just added tremendous cost to some of that work as well. And I think that type of cost should be borne, by the people that live in the metro area. They're the ones that will benefit from, a cleaner, nicer improvement when it's all said and done. So I don't know. It's gonna be super interesting. From the local government perspective, we're very concerned that the legislature is gonna be so enamored with having to do the big ODOT lifts that they're not going to honor 50, 30, 20 like they have in the past. It's gonna be, you'll get what you get, but this one's for ODOT. So that's the drum, we're trying to beat is
It
that.
should be flipped. It should be 50 local, 30 county, 20 state.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the one thing, the thing that the reason there's the disparity there, cities have a lot of tools to generate local funding, like the transportation utility fee. If there was a local gas tax, the city could implement that through vote. But at least because all the gas stations for the most part are in the city limits. And so cities can charge franchise fees to utilities, counties can't. Cities can use general fund dollars, property tax on their system. Counties are restricted from doing that. And so you would think cities
You
would
guys
get,
get all the registration funds. I'm kidding.
there's a tool where some counties can implement an added registration fee component. And they've done that in Clackamas County and maybe another county. But that money was also be shared with the local governments in the county as well.
Most of it, I think there's a statutory requirement in how it's shared,
Yeah.
I think.
So cities are kind of, you get that, most people live in the city. And yet cities only get 20%. But it's those local funding tools, that are available to help generate for cities to add to their, what they get from the state. For counties though, can't use property tax, can't charge franchise fees. Local gas tax, doesn't really matter at that point. Really, there hardly are any local funding tools available to us. So the legislature, is focusing on transportation funding, focusing on ODOT state. But we're trying to get them to understand, hey, we're actually tied at the hip. Right, wrong, or indifferent, we're tied at the hip to the state. And if we don't get something significant out of this funding package. Our legislature meets, deals with transportation funding every, 8 to 10 years, right? I mean, that's just their habit. And, that's gonna be the big issue for the county side for sure.
I saw Redmond with their tax on rental cars expecting to get
Wow.
$2 million a year. From
They're-
taxing all the people that rent rental cars. At first I was envious and then I thought, well, good for them.
Yeah, I mean, that's a super creative, unique
Yeah,
opportunity that they had there and are taking advantage of it. But they're bonding that, putting it right into improvements kind of right by the airport.
Yeah.
And the project that they're doing there, so.
well, thanks for that, Chris.
No.
I would just echo too. I was gonna say in terms of like the county issues, I think what we heard at the roundtable, especially, I think there were reps there from Klamath County and Lake counties.
Mhm.
I mean, Shutes County is relatively okay, I think, as
Yeah.
counties go, but boy, listen to some of these rural counties, they are in a dire situation.
Yeah,
I didn't,
absolutely.
I mean, I knew that, but I didn't realize the extent of it until
Mm.
that roundtable discussion.
Yeah,
That was
ca-
pretty eye-opening.
Counties, get the 30%, but then that 30% is doled out based on number of registered vehicles in your county as a proportion, statewide. So if you're a small county, of which generally there's about 29 small counties in this state and 7 large county, urban type counties, we're number 7. They are doing bare bones maintenance and operations and have been for years.
That seems
Yeah.
kind of backwards along those same lines that you were just saying. So the counties with the most population have other funding opportunities.
Well, we get a bigger piece of that pie.
Right, because
Um,
that's where a city is on top of the county.
Chris, is
But
that
the counties
specific,
with so little population
is that,
are, I'm sorry, go ahead.
is that specific to Oregon?
Yes.
Because, yeah, when I worked for the Nevada DOT for a short amount of time, and they obviously have counties with very, very low population, but it was based on lane miles.
Right. Lane miles factor into other formula funds, generally, I think like the fund exchange funding. Lane miles come into play, but in Oregon, it's different. Now, I mean, the more people you have, the more problems you have too, right? So, we built, we're building 1 or 2 roundabouts a year to deal with congestion and safety issues on our system. Just because of the amount of growth, the amount of people who are using the county system, getting off the state system, using the rural transportation system to get between communities. And so, more money, more problems.
Mhm.
And also we tend to, we've spent $27 million over the past 4 years on partnership projects with ODOT. So that roundabout tunnel, the county funded that. 10 million out of the 30 million in Terrebonne's coming from the county. Gave the North End project here in Bend 5 million, even though it doesn't even touch a county road. That was just we gotta throw some seed money to kind of get the other money, the federal grant coming in. And a handful of other projects, 27 million local government, state partnerships, pretty unique. But that's where we have our problems, is when county roads connect to certain state facilities. And, it's instead of a signal or roundabout, it's an interchange. And, that's where the decimal point, moves 1 spot to the right.
I'm trying to think of the perfect analogy. It seems like it's probably something that happens at a county fair where you put everybody in together and everybody who's in, they're trying to hold on to something they already have while grasping for shiny objects when the underlying problem is funding. It's with just so much attention on the shiny objects
Yeah.
of projects, right?
Right.
And earmarks, and the need is here or the need is there, when really what the need is an entire redesign of the funding system.
Yeah, absolutely. I could go on, but I mean, we're in this position based on just the pure economics of the fact that our legislature adjusted the gas tax in 1993 to 24 cents a gallon. They had just spent 10 out of the 11 previous legislative sessions adjusting it from 8 cents to 24 cents. And it sat at 24 cents from 1993 to 2011. And more fuel was used, Oregon was growing, that growth hit a lot of flaws. And so maintenance was getting more money, but structurally, more was having to go out and the system wasn't doing that well. It's the inflation and the lost opportunity of that almost 20-year period of no adjustments,
Right.
is the reason why we're in this position.
And
In
also,
2011, they bonded, they did a registration fee increase, bonded for projects. House Bill 2017 hardly did anything for maintenance, bonded for all these projects throughout the state. And it really never, given maintenance its due
Yeah,
until all of a sudden they wake up and it's a $700 million deficit 5 years down the road.
yeah,
And, something's gotta be done. And, it's a vicious cycle of being, brought to, selling yes votes for sexy projects
right.
instead of
Right.
getting down to the nuts and bolts of maintaining an asset that's
Right.
rotting.
No, I honestly, Chris, say all the time, I'm sorry, Ari, but the problem is us. It is elected officials who want those big shiny things, want to be able to say, look at the new thing I got for you, look at this big shiny thing. Because getting elected on, I'm gonna do the same as we've always done.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna fund maintenance, I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take care of what's already in place. Is just not as, maybe easy to get elected on as I'm gonna build you a new thing and this
Right.
is what the new thing is gonna be,
Well, that's it. That's why we're in
right?
this spot.
but also the fact that we're using more electric vehicles,
Mhm.
so you aren't getting the gas tax.
That's right. And they're heavy.
And then you're also more efficient. So in other words, per mile, you're getting less gas tax on it.
Absolutely.
I mean,
No,
that's-
it is so
that's
much,
it.
I
That's it.
just think, I don't know, maybe
what it
we just
works.
need to consolidate our comments to that. Stop distracting us with projects, stop distracting us with earmarks. Funding is it, funding is everything. Nobody's gonna talk about anything but funding for, the next legislative session. Oh, you guys, thanks so much. I appreciate, it's such an important discussion. I appreciate taking the time. So the issue was a little bit back to the listening session. So thank you very much. I didn't go on any bus tours. I did the roundtable, was there on behalf of MPO and COACT. I was happy to see that the chair of COACT, Wayne Fording, we weren't sure if he was going to be able to be there, and he was, because I really think there should be a lot of power when we, the biggest, maybe most liberal city on the east side of the mountains, are speaking with one voice with the representative from Madras, one of the most conservative. And, when we can agree that this is what we need, I feel like that ought to be powerful to these elected officials. And I agree with Ari, that was the case, just like a single voice for safety and maintenance money, right? Just over and over around that round table, whether we were representing our city here or some tiny little community, it really did seem that everybody is concerned about, the funding and then safety. Any other comments? So what are we doing with this action request? Options for Bend MPO Policy Board engagement during the 2025 legislative session. What are our options? Have we got options?
Yeah, I mean, there's gonna be a lot happening, right? AOC is
Right.
gonna be heavily engaged, LOC is gonna be heavily engaged.
Right.
City of Bend has its own lobbyist. He will be engaging on behalf of the city. And I think there's opportunities that we could piggyback off of some of those opportunities and just, provide letters of support or
Mhm.
testimony, whatever it may be, from
Mhm.
some of our board members, depending on where those discussions go.
For myself, I think we need to be leaning heavily into when the biggest city and the smallest agree, that is what is unique over here. Is it's so much different than Portland Metro. We have so many different concerns, we have different attitudes, we have different lifestyles, and that is what makes us unique in this state. Ari?
Yeah, I guess the challenge would be in identifying the particular policies that we'd want to support. I mean, I felt like the League of Cities effort was really good,
Mhm.
but when the biggest transportation item there is this omnibus package that include, it feels like it's, 2 steps forward and 1 step back, if not 1 step forward and 2 steps back, when you start to consider the magnitude of some of these capital commitments. So, I mean, I don't know, do you feel like we would need to go through some kind of process to identify, like you were saying, well, where are the areas where we feel like we're in agreement, or where do we want to support? I mean, what?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can, like I said, I think it'd be worth, I mean, we're not gonna have, the 3 of us aren't gonna have time to be tracking the minutia of everything that's happening, but we're gonna see highlights of what's happening, and I think if there's touch points where there's specific things that we could, I mean, AOC, LOC, City of Bend, I think CET is gonna be submitting comment as well, or tracking different things, as long as we can keep track of what each of those entities is doing, there'll be places where I think we could, have a voice potentially in those to support.
So strategically look for
Yeah.
opportunities.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yes.
Do we want to ask any of our representatives to come talk to us? We could ask. Drag Emerson in.
I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I think, knowing how fast the legislative session moves, I don't know. Yeah, I mean,
Maybe in like November, December meeting or something, try and get them to tell us what they, are work. I don't know. It's just an idea. Yeah, and I will tell you, there is one person, I mean, it's no secret, it's on TV, Lori Chavez DeReamer is advertising. She is just so proud to have fought tolling in the Portland metro area. And I scream at the TV whenever I hear that. I'll just go ahead and admit it. I used to live on the East Coast. You can't go anywhere without having to pay a little toll for a particular stretch of highway or for a bridge, for infrastructure projects that were, this is what it's paying for, not just money going somewhere into the system. And I absolutely think that tolling is a fair way to get the users of a system to help pay. So that, yeah, I would drag her in, Lori, what are you thinking?
I mean,
Why do you think this is something, again, it's legs of a stool. Oregon has, wow, do Oregonians take away legs and leave stools very, very shaky?
she probably doesn't really have much of a voice in that anyway.
I know, right? But that is the kind of discussion I'd be looking for is, what are you looking to do? She, of course, is federal, she's not state, but with our state legislatures. So I'm just gonna leave that out there as an idea.
Yeah.
Okay? Everybody knows who to talk to. It's me and Tyler. That's the next item on our agenda is what do we want to do with our upcoming meetings? But let's go ahead and make sure we've finished with number 8. Staff, is there anything else? Is there anything you were hoping would come out of this discussion?
No, I just wanted to crack it open.
Yeah, good.
Because I think
Good.
we heard it, I think, at the roundtable,
Mm-hmm.
and Chris has mentioned it. They're gonna start off with a bunch of probably small work groups, hammering through, working through different issues. The real making of a new funding bill, that's gonna probably be like May and June. I'm guessing it's gonna be in the latter half of the legislative session. So we're gonna have time,
Yeah.
to see kind of what bubbles up during the first couple months and then engage
Mhm.
later.
Great. Thank you. I really do. I think it's a really important thing. I have worked with OMPOC to be on that same idea that, wow, in the fall, you got to start thinking about legislative session and what do you want to come out of legislative session? And same with COACT. And I just think anytime we can just ignore whatever differences we have and focus on the things we agree on, which funding and maintenance and safety, right? And maintenance, right? So thanks, everybody. Thank you to everybody who participated. I think, is there one more stop on their listening tour of the state? Were we the very last?
Now they're in Hillsborough, I think, and Happy Valley, maybe, they're the last two stops up in the metro area.
Seemed like there was a virtual one kind of tucked in there
Yeah.
too.
Huh?
I think they added a few at the end, so there was, I think, 4 or 5 more after us.
Mm-hmm. And from what I've seen, certainly anybody can go and sit in the room. And then the public comment opportunities, they're not limiting to people who live, any of these listening sessions are open to everyone. So yeah, if you want to drive up to Happy Valley there and see what folks in Happy Valley have to say. So again, mostly just thank you. Thank you to everyone. It was work on staff's part, trying by behalf and part, I'm gonna turn into one word, on behalf of us, just trying to get together, what do we want to say? How do we want to present ourselves was staff work, and I appreciate it. So I think we're off on a good foot. I really am glad that we're started this early when we think it's going to be May or June before they're actually talking transportation. But having seen this year after year, it does seem like this is what you got to do. You got to get out there early.
But yeah, it's pretty unique, I think, that they spent all summer touring the state.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if it is addressed sooner than that time frame, just given the momentum from that. They're not gonna want to waste that.
Uh-huh. I hope not. There were a lot of folks in that room. Appreciate all of those folks on that committee who are doing this drive around the entire state, listen to people weekend after weekend. Really a lot of appreciation to the folks on that committee. Great. Okay, that will get us over to agenda item number 9, which is other business. So upcoming, we are looking to write a letter of support for the City of Bend's grant application. Tyler, you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, I think it was in the packet. It was just, the city of Bend applied for and received a small grant to help with the engineering for the Reed Market Railroad overcrossing.
Yes.
Through the Railroad Crossing Elimination Program, which is a federal funding program. They are going to be submitting another grant for construction funding to help supplement the GO bond funding. So to be able to fully fund that effort. So we drafted a letter of support and they needed it by today. So I already had Barb sign it, so. It's just more of an FYI.
You want me to rush there and say, no, we changed our minds. Tyler and I felt entirely confident that yes, this is something we've discussed over and over again. And I mean, the project was voted on by the public,
Yeah.
In particular, gave us the confidence to go ahead and send that letter. So.
Do you practice the chair's signatures?
What's the total amount of the project with engineering and construction, as of with 2024 dollars worth?
I think the grant was for 45 million.
I haven't seen it actually.
I'm just,
I haven't seen that.
I didn't see it in the letter,
I
so
haven't
that's
seen
why
it.
I'm asking.
I
Yeah.
think the project total that the grant supports is 45 million. So the city asked for that. I think we saw that number on Wednesday night.
And I know the first grant that was awarded for design was, I believe, $1 million.
Okay.
So.
But I think project total wise it's a big project.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever seen a estimated total. The amount in the bond is 35 million.
Yeah, that's what I remember is 35.
But I think that's for the entirety of Reed Market.
Yeah.
And so, I mean,
Exactly.
Yeah,
And-
the project cost in the grant was 46 million.
Thank you.
The city's request is a little over 32, so the rest is coming from the bond as match.
Excellent.
Thanks, David.
I personally, I'm hoping it goes just like the Hawthorne crossing, where we have been successful bringing in grant money. And because of that, we are only going to need a little bit of that bond money that was in there, which means bond money can go to other bond projects.
Yeah.
Obviously that money couldn't go outside of the scope of the bond, but when we committed to the public to build things, it's really the building of the thing that is important. If we can get money from someplace else, that's just a benefit to the community.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we are doing the same as with that bridge. If we can get every single penny paid for with federal dollars, then that would just be money for improvements elsewhere along that corridor or for other bond projects. So thank you to everyone who is working on that. Let's see, upcoming, our meeting for December would fall on the 20th. Which is the Friday, so that would be the Friday before Christmas.
yeah, it's the last, I mean, winter break for K-12, school starts the next day essentially. So just wanted to see, make sure everyone, are you gonna be available for the 20th, or do we need to potentially look at moving that?
Schools, that's the last day of
That's the
school.
last day of school.
Got it, is the 20th.
At least it is in the Bend MPO
Mhm.
system. I'm assuming it is in the other.
Mhm. Anybody?
I think I'm available.
I can't speak for Commissioner Chang, but I believe I'll be here. And if he's not here, get another sandwich.
There you go. And
Every motion that's made.
and you know, this is just one of those decisions that is easier now after COVID because we have the hybrid option. And even if every single one of us has gone over the river and through the woods to visit our grandmothers, we can zoom in from grandmother's house if we need to. I'm comfortable, just go ahead, we'll stick with that date, which is the easiest, obviously, other than trying to find a different time. All right,
Make an agenda item request.
of course you can.
And I'm not sure if this is implicated in the items in that third bullet point or not, Tyler, you tell me, but I would like to start the conversation around the state highway funding that the MPO allocates to City of Bend pavement preservation. The idea would be to have just maybe provide us with an overview, but really with an eye to two things. One would be to try to identify more sustainable funding for pavement preservation, as well as alternatives for what the state highway funding that the MPO receives could be used for.
Yes, I have already warned city staff that this discussion is coming. I've told David Abbas that, David, we are interested in thinking more creatively about that money and, you know, be more specific, you know, right now, yeah, absolutely. Most of ours just goes straight, there he is, straight to the city of Bend for pavement protection. David has done excellent work maintaining, like, the green paints used to be specifically called out. And now the city of Bend just keeps up that program with our dollars. David, did you have a comment to make?
You perked my interest, Counselor Mendez. No, it's as we transition and phase in the transportation utility fee, we'll see what the legislation does as a conversation that has been going on, and Chris did a great job of kind of summarizing that up and good discussion. I didn't need to jump in; it was covered well. But yeah, I mean, we'll see where these things go. Councilor Mendez and Campbell, as you know, there's the phase 2 of the transportation utility fee discussions to be had over the next 9 months here as we work on the next biennial budget. I just want to really get us back on an improving trend and The funding to make that happen is a variety of tools. And so I think as we will continue forward and look at that bottom line, take care of the infrastructure we have, and try to do that better and more innovative and safety with a kind of that complete street approach. Where the dollars come from, not a big thing for me. And if we can free up some MPO dollars for some other things and we're back on an improving trend and taking care of the system we have, I think that's great. So we just need to kind of see where these other tools come in. But happy to be a part of those conversations with the MPO going forward.
Thank you for that, David. One place that I would like to ask maybe to specifically consider is the funding of the Neighborhood Safe Streets program, which does not have sustainable funding, but it's something that we hear about from residents almost at every single neighborhood association, neighborhood district meeting. So just I'd like to have that conversation, kind of get that what did you say, crack it open before?
Yeah, no, that's a great program. And as we started that in our department with $800,000 of seed money. And then that was able to be rolled up into the general obligation bond by the voters. But that's not sustainable beyond the GEO bond. There was $8 million for that program. So I agree. Beyond the GEO bond, that's a program worth trying to keep going.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you,
So
David.
we'll talk. I mean, the three of us will talk, and I think, maybe the October meeting, but more likely the November meeting, we can talk about the history, current commitments, and then kind of walk through potential options or, options and limitations on these.
That's great. Thank you. And then other potential topics you see up on the screen, the pedestrian network implementation plan overview, Dutch Cycling Embassy follow-up. I'm interested in that one. We helped fund that visit, and I just feel like this is an important thing that you do with the money, is see what we've learned and follow up. That'll be great. MPO bylaws, that is there. In particular is the idea of having a CET member as part of the board. I think that would be part of that bylaws discussion. Am I right about that, Tyler?
Yeah.
Excellent. And then IGA between the MPO and the city of Bend. We've got strategic plan, our goals and our charter. All of these are ideas for topics coming up. You can always reach out to myself or Tyler if you have other ideas, or if you have passion about one of these topics. Yes, let's do that tomorrow. You can let us know. Right. Our next meeting is October 18th, and we will be back over at the ODOT Region 4 headquarters. Meeting will start at noon, and yes, free lunch for board members if you're here with us again. Chris Doty. That's one last chance for public comment. Anyone like to address the board? Seeing none, I will say we are adjourned. Thank you so much. Great discussion today, everybody.